Hello, and welcome to Pulp Herb Reads Things. I'm Herb, and this is my channel where I discuss what I've been reading now, what I've read in the past, my thoughts about all of them, and where they intersect. Today, I want to discuss The Two Towers, not the middle volume of J.R.R. Tolkien's three-volume novel, The Lord of the Rings, but instead the first two books I read for Garb August in 2025, The Glass Inferno and The Tower. These novels came out roughly the same time in 1973 and were optioned by separate movie studios, which led to a joint production of The Tower. I discussed that in my Garb August Kickoff video, which I'll link to right here. But just to say, they were combined into one film to avoid two films on essentially the same topic, a high-rise fire and people trapped in the building at the same time, leading to the highest grossing film of 1975, Irwin Allen's The Towering Inferno. The first of the books is The Tower by Richard Martin Stern. It's the shorter of the books. It's about 80,000 words. And what it contributes to the movie is the building. And one or two character elements, one secondary character. But it really incorporates the building and the nature of the problem with the people on the top floor. Some interesting points. It incorporates much more about changing mores of the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. Quite specifically, the perceived popularity of wife swapping in that period is a minor but important plot point in the book in establishing the bad guy character and what he's willing to do, and setting up the architect of the building who is fighting the fire, or is assisting in fighting the fire from the ground. He's not actually a firefighter, but he's trying to aid in the rescue and the firefighting by his knowledge of the building. It is a tight thriller, although it does start out with a large cast. It narrows it down to the focus on principally two characters, the architect who designed the building, who is the on-the-ground character, and the governor of the state of New York, who is on the top floor during the dedication ceremony when the fire broke out, trying to control, inspire, and direct the crowd that had been on the top floor for a reception that is trapped by the fire. And in that, like I said, it becomes a very tight thriller. It is really those two men's interior battles with some bits and pieces here from other characters. It has much less of a happy ending of the two books. And although there is some karmic reckoning for one character, the electrical subcontractor, who created most of the issues that led to the fire happening, although it does have a saboteur who really sets things off. It was the cut corners that let his sabotage be so destructive when he just wanted to, turn out the power and kind of embarrass the company on its grand gala. Like I said, for the movie, it principally contributed the building in terms of the building is designed and of the scope of the building in the movies of the building in the tower. It is the tallest building in the world at its time, and it is the only one definitely situated in the real world. It is in New York. It is taller than the recently completed World Trade Center, which was an interesting reminder. I am still closer to 9/11 than 9/11 was to the building of those two buildings, but we are only about a decade away from them having been gone as long as they were there, which was an interesting contrast in reading it. And they do play a role, and we'll get to that in just a second. But its number of floors, even today, would put it in the top 10 most floors in a building in the world, and it would be in the top 20 tallest as described in the book. So it contributes to the building, as I alluded to a little earlier, the nature of the fire from the cutting corners of the electrical system, which is then overloaded, causing fires to break out on multiple floors, and loss of things like elevators and everything to rescue 4 people in the top is missing. The fact that the building is just opening and that the celebration on the top floor is a gala for the building's opening is also drawn from the tower. And this gets to the 2 towers, the World Trade Center 2 towers, not the 2 towers of this video. The breacher's buoy being used as a rescue device to go from the top floor of the burning building to a nearby skyscraper is drawn directly from this book, including the need to get on a helicopter to fire the heavy line in to bring it over because you can't reach it from the other building. And in fact, just that not being able to reach in that, those takeoff seconds that in the book you can see take time, because towards the end they do use the breacher's buoy to rescue people, and you know how many people there are. You know that it's taking about a minute per person to get them across, and there's that. So that's The Tower by Richard Martin Stern. As a book, I would give it a 3, maybe a 3.5 out of 5. I don't know if I would read it again, but I'm glad I read it. The second book is The Glass Inferno. It is the longer of the 2 books and was written by Thomas N. Scortia and Frank M. Robinson. I hope I have that last name correct. I don't think I've pronounced it twice the same way. It is the longer book. It's about 140,000 words contrasted to 80, so 3/4 again as long as the 2 towers, and it's that long because it's not as tight a book. What it contributes to the film is not the building but the characters. Pretty much every character you can think of, except for the Richard Chamberlain electoral subcontractor who was behind the falsified documents in the tower, comes from The Glass Inferno more than the Towering Inferno. There were the battalion chiefs, but the main battalion chief who works with the architect and is a major character, and the character of the architect who are working on the ground to figure out how to fight this fire, they are much more from the Glass Inferno than the Towering Inferno, although the architect character combines elements of both to a degree. It has a reporter subplot who's been reporting on corners cut in buildings and poor fire safety. Very 70s, very early 60 Minutes, pre-2020 kind of thing. I did not like that. I don't think it added much to the book. And in terms of characters, it is much stronger on the karmic reckoning, although the exact person directly responsible for the fire, and this incident causes the fire, does get comic justice in both, in that in the tower he's fried by the electrical system that he sabotages, and in the Glass Inferno it's an irresponsible janitor who gets consumed by the fire. It does have a lot more karmic elements, although for those who've seen the movie, Lizette's story is pretty much intact but ends better. It also includes the security chief, played by O.J. Simpson as a major character, the rescue of the cat by fortune at the end, Lisette and her dinner date, who is the con artist who confesses to him, and they are in love. The external elevator is the one building element from it, and it being shocked by an explosion of fire and people being trapped and somebody falling out are from it. Pretty much every character is drawn from this book more than from the tower. Like I said, except for the electrical subcontractor whose falsified documents and corner cutting aided the fire in the tower, and the architect is maybe half and half. Because of that, I actually didn't find it as interesting, whereas I said the tower narrows it down to focus on these 2 characters at the end, or to focus on the architect and the governor of New York at the end, one on the ground, one trapped above. It keeps it dispersed, which is why it was an easier read. No story got quite as complex. In characters, though, it does have one interesting character the Tower doesn't, in that it treats the fire itself as a character, and how it expands, how it almost goes out, how it comes back. And I found that a rather interesting part. On the whole, I give it about a 2.5 out of 5. I don't think I would have read it without Garb August, and I don't think I would have been missing things like I would have with the Tower. And I don't think I recommend it. Something I did notice is the Tower is available as an ebook. I had to find a physical copy of the Glass Inferno. For books 50 years old, I think that's an indicator of which one had more staying power. It might also just be an indicator of which estate is smarter about licensing things. In looking at the 3 authors involved, I am much more likely to seek out something by Richard Martin Stern than by either Scortia or Robinson. Stern started a mystery series about a detective named Johnny Ortez about the same time he wrote The Tower, and I am probably going to see if I can find 1 or 2 of those and try them out. I like mysteries. I like detective stories. I liked his writing, and if The Tower is an indication of his ability to build and control tension, I think a mystery by him could be quite fun. And Robinson did several other collaborations after the Glass Inferno. That was their first. Another one was made into a film as well, The Gold Crew. In terms of my big thing, I was able to find more about short fiction by Robinson. I will probably try to find some of that, although I will not read short fiction by him first, simply because Scortia has a 1 short story, The Bomb in the Bathtub, which you can get free at archive.org, and I'll include a link of that below, obviously. One interesting fact about Scortia is Harland Ellison apparently knew him when he was in the Army and credits Scortia by name from saving him from being court-martialed in 1958, something Harlan Ellison does discuss in the introduction to Angry Candy. I found Angry Candy's intro, but there were no more details. It was pretty much just 1 sentence. These were people I was with, and blah, 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 blah. Thomas Scortia, who saved me from being court-martialed in my one-man private war against the U.S. Army. Scortia also wrote a novel with Dalton Trumbo in The Endangered Species. If I'm going to read another Scortia novel, just because it's co-written with Trumbo, who is an interesting historical character whose writing I'm not actually very familiar with, just his involvement with naming names, I might seek that one out. Robinson had a solo novel made into a movie, The Power. He was also a speechwriter for Harvey Milk and was apparently Milk's kind of designated successor, a role he did not want to take. He has a lot of short fiction listed, but I have not been able to find any of it online. But I might seek it out. But if I'm going to seek out any work by Robinson, he wrote a history of the art of pulp magazines called Pulp Culture, The Art of Fiction Magazines. I need to find that. I need to get a copy. And if I can, that's going on next year's Garb August list. That is a perfect Garb August nonfiction book. And I need to get one before Ollie does, and Michael J. Vaughn, because I bet he's the kind of guy who would have that. I'll have to look. So that's the authors. I will probably seek out short fiction by both of them. I'll certainly read Scortia's novel free online sometime soon in my daily short story reading, if nothing else. So I guess it's time to look at the real question I think these books bring is, did there need to be 2 movies? So, as I talked about in the Garb August intro video, Irwin Allen had seen pairs of movies on similar subjects twice in the 60s cannibalize each other, which is what led him to get Fox to negotiate with, I believe it was Paramount. I didn't put that in the notes. But for the rights holders, studios of the two books, to do a joint production. I don't think there needed to be two movies. The tower does not contribute a lot to the movie beyond the scope of the building, which you could have just grafted on top of the Glass Inferno. Oh, it's not 100. It's not 66 stories. It's 132. Double it. Look up the size. You're good to go. It did contribute the breacher's buoy as part of the rescue, and yet it had a helicopter rescue at the end. Or, I'm sorry, the Glass Inferno had the helicopter rescue at the end, which was attempted in the Towering Inferno. And somebody rushes the copter and he veers and crashes. I think the last, the regular rescue through the external elevator that breaks and the need to invent that in the Glass Inferno would have done just as well in the movie. The Breaches Buoy subplot, although it does provide the Richard Chamberlain character who forged and changed the requirements and that led to the fire. It is where he gets his karmic moment. That's really the biggest thing the tower adds plot-wise, and that character. And there were suitable substitutes in the Glass Inferno. Now, there were some horrific elements in the Glass Inferno which were minimized or omitted. The rappelling of the firefighters down the shaft was in both the, and do I need to say spoilers on 50-year-old books? In the book, they are going down a single line instead of multiples. The one on top realizes he didn't have a good grip. If he slides, he can knock the others off. Lets go to fall to his death. That was omitted. The elevator stopping on the fire floor, killing people, was in the Glass Inferno in much more detail. There are several fire deaths that are karmic deaths, both of characters that appeared in the film and several that didn't. That is just, they're really horrific. And for 70s movie aimed at a general adult audience, they were omitted. I don't think the movie's any lesser for them, but that is the idea. Those are the kind of things that could have been used to fill out the little bit of runtime needed. But they're very different in style. The Glass Inferno is very much the kind of story the movie was. This is not meant to be demeaning, but to just be a quick description. They are super Love Boat stories. You have characters who's weave in and out, and you follow one for some time, follow another. They all resolve together. The resolutions are done in an order where they see each other. The last chapter with that is actually kind of clever, where two characters discussing something, they look over and they see, oh, these other characters, and then we move on to their resolution. Actually, one of those characters, I'm thinking about the resolution, was, it's the 70s, so roll with it. A gay couple who owned a interior decorating business in the building, whose storeroom helps aid the spread of the fire, not because it's badly held, but just because of the amount of fire loading that kind of business would have. And I wonder if they were omitted from the movie, because they were one of the more interesting ones, because it was okay to have a gay couple like that in the book, but in a movie in 75, I don't know. But again, that's an example of how the tower didn't need to add much, and you could have added stuff from the Glass Inferno. So I think the movie we really got was the Glass Inferno, with a little bit of the tower to satisfy the dual production needs. Meanwhile, the Glass Inferno is very much an Irwin Allen disaster film, all the characters, the dramatic moments. I would really love to see a movie made just of the tower. I'd love to see it today. I talked about how it narrows its character focus down over time to just the governor of New York on the top floor and the architect helping to guide fire and rescue from the bottom floor or from the ground. Excuse me. And you could build a very tight thriller on that. I talked about this a little earlier, but I want to talk about the Breacher's Buoy, because this is why I would like to have seen this as a separate movie. there's a conscious element of time, how much the fire is spreading, how hot things are getting in the tower. It does have the elevator killing somebody. In its case, it's the elevator is a flu. They get one elevator working. They're going to evacuate a bunch of people. Somebody who started waiting runs and takes it. He's going to be the first. Everybody else. He cooks in the 130 floor drop in the elevator, which is acting like a flu. So it turns out to be good he didn't, because they probably would have gotten, as unusual as this seems, it seems to imply about 50 people, maybe 40 people in the elevator by exceeding the limits and pushing their luck, and they would have lost more. But you have an exact count of people trapped on the top floor, something you never get in the Glass Inferno. And by the time they get the breacher's buoy strung between the building in the book and World Trade Center 1 or 2, I don't think they say which one. And you know the breacher's buoy is taking a minute to bring someone across, bring it back, load, unload, which is actually kind of good time. But we know it's a minute, whether that's realistic or not. It's a minute. We know how fast the fire is spreading. We know how many people we are. And we know characters we've come to like and dislike and what their numbers were in drawing lots. They sent all the women first, as tradition, at least still intact at that time, would have done. But the Governor of York, we know his number in the draw. He is the character whose head we've been in the most, with the possible exception of the Architect Knights, about that time there, half and half. And we've seen him deal with people. We see him getting a woman he's fallen in love with in the course of the story. He's a widower, so it's not anything illicit. We've seen her try to stay with him when all the other women are gone and let men start going. When he finds out, he puts her in the damn buoy himself. And there's about, we know there's 102 people, and we know how many get saved. And we know things like, you can estimate the time the attempt to take over the breacher's buoy, and it gets stopped, and we know how long it's stopped for. It doesn't fall like in the movie, but they stop it until there's control. And they talk about military discipline and mutiny with that. And you can estimate how much time is lost. You know the number of the last person over, you know the governor's number, and you know he probably would have been the last or the next to the last person out if that revolt hadn't taken place. These are all the elements. We have a ticking bomb under the table. The characters know there's a ticking, they know there's a bomb, but they don't know when it's going to go off, but you know when it's going off. And there's just a lot of excellent tension. And I think you could make a really good movie that would have not competed with the Towering Inferno, that would have not competed with the Glass Inferno, which is essentially the Glass Inferno as a movie. And I really wish we'd gotten that movie. I'd love to see Hollywood do it today. It is a 50-year-old book on a premise that I think you could still sell and make an excellent film out of. So, if you've seen the Towering Inferno and want to look into its past, I would definitely recommend The Tower. If you want to read a novel very much of its time, like I said, it talks about Moors and changing in the 70s, but has a tight thriller plot, it's available as an ebook. I will link to it below. And I would say if you're interested, read it. If you're interested in the background of the movie, read both. But even if you're not, I would recommend The Tower. So that's the start of my Garb August. We will be back next week. Not with Garb August material, but I'm going to take it on early. The Nature of Service and Starship Troopers and some other Heinlein works. And what that leads to in terms of the author making assumptions about what the reader is going to assume on the work. As always, if you've enjoyed this, please click like, subscribe. I'm a new channel. I would love subscribers. Or maybe not. This one's been a fun one to make. I'm on about my 6th take for some parts. But thank you for your time.